I want to talk to you about self-hosting on your home server. And the question is it worth it? How does the process actually go? And what you need to be aware of as you actually navigate the whole process. So let me give you an overview here. If you think about self-hosting really means that you are owning and administrating your own server, typically at home, to host actually your personal data and services yourself instead of relying exclusively on third parties, right? So you have more autonomy. For instance, you can self host your blog such that it lives on a machine that you have control of instead of having it on somebody else's computer, aka things, or the clouds, okay, in exchange for money, advertisement, or private data. So you really retain a certain level of privacy and also autonomy when it comes to the data itself. So self hosting actually implies owning a server. So you got to have a server. If you are thinking about self hosting, you got to have a home server or a server at the office, whatever. Okay, so a server is nothing but a computer, a mega computer, which is typically accessible on the network 24/7 and usually doesn't have any screen or a keyboard. It is instead controlled remotely. So control, let's say, contrarily to a popular belief, a server is not necessarily a huge and extra powerful machine, depending on how if you want to use it for B2B purposes or B2C purposes, you need some kind of power. But if you're using it for yourself, then the power can be decent. Okay. So nowadays, a small $30 ARM board is adequate for self-hosting. Okay. So nothing really major here. So what I want to say here real fast is that self-hosting is not about making your internet more secure and does not provide an let's say an anonymous profile by itself. Instead, it's all about being autonomous and in control of your services and data, which also means being responsible for them. Now, why should you host yourself? Well, you believe in a free, open, and decentralized internet. You want to have control of your data and services, like pictures, chat messages, browsing history, and the text you are writing for school, for instance. You want to learn about how computers and the internet work, and you want to explore new possibilities and also customize things in the meantime. Okay. So, why should you not host yourself? Well, self hosting requires some work and patience. Hosting yourself is a bit like growing your own garden of vegetables. It requires work and patience, while, so something to really think about. And with great servers comes great responsibilities. Operating a server means you are responsible for the data you are hosting. Nobody will be able to recover them for you if they get lost. So be aware of that. So when it comes to self-hosting, let me give you the steps you need to really think about this year as you're trying to really navigate the self-hosting world. First of all, find a problem to solve. Okay, it's not about just I love hosting my data. Okay, I love hosting my data. That's really a decent statement, but it's not really enough. Okay, find a problem to solve. So one of the best motivators for setting up your home lab or self-hosting setup is to actually solve a real problem that you have. So what's your problem? What's the problem you're trying to really solve? Okay, do you want to automate your home with the home assistant? Do you want to make sure? Do you want to have more control over certain things? Okay, or do you want your family and yourself to be able to back up their valuable photos and videos to your server using Nextcloud, for instance? Okay, or do you want to share your media collection with your family and friends using Jellyfin? So it really depends on the problem you're trying to solve. It depends on it depends on the level, what I call your grade of being pissed off. Okay, how pissed are you? How disappointed are you at the current system, so that you want to really bring a solution to the table yourself? Okay, it doesn't really matter what solution you end up using or how you do it, as long as the solution is a secure solution and that solves your digital problem or your original problem without creating 10 or 20 or 30 additional choices, right? It's you're not a you don't have time to spend on fixing technological problems unless you love doing it. But normally you want to have a solution that's really straightforward, a solution that's very user friendly, a solution that doesn't require like a steep learning curve. You don't want to spend days and afternoons and weekends on learning the solution. The solution should be intuitive to actually save you money. Okay. And so when it comes to self-hosting, everything starts by making sure that you find the problem you want to solve. Okay. You want, and the problem has to be compelling enough for you to invest in a solution in the long run. So when it comes to self-hosting on your home server, the first thing you want to do after talking about like after taking care of the preliminary phase of problem solving, you want to find a place for running your software. You want to do it in the basement. You want to do it in your garage. You want to do it in your backyard. You want to do it outside. You want to do it inside. You want to do it in an adjacent place to the house. Think about it. Once you have a problem that you are going to solve, you will need to also find a home for your project to live in. So for this, you have a lot of different options. You can use a virtual machine at a cloud service provider. So DigitalOcean, Linode, okay. Performance is not the best and beefier configurations can be quite expensive, but this is a reliable option with a fast network. So that's number one, using a virtual machine at a cloud service provider. You also have the possibility of renting a server from a service provider, for example, Hetzner. And so Hetzner actually, this is more performant than a virtual machine at most cloud service providers, but probably more expensive as well, and usually comes with a fast network. An old laptop that you have collecting dust on your shelf, not the fastest or the quietest option, but it does not use a lot of power. You can have also an old desktop PC, so probably plenty of fast for any task that you can throw at it, but its power usage is higher compared to laptops. A tiny desktop PC, so here you have low power usage, but can pack quite a punch, so that's kind of important. You also have a single board computer, such as a Raspberry Pi or a Raspberry Pi or alternatives. Plenty of performance for most workloads. It uses very little power, 5 to 15 watts generally, and silent as well. You can also think about a second-hand rack-mounted server, probably quite performant, but uses a lot of power and is very noisy. You can also think about a NAS box from one of the more popular providers, Synology, okay, Green, QNAP, Terra Monster, useful for when you need a lot of storage on your machine or something that just works, okay? So your choice will likely be affected by other factors as well. So your home connection, your home internet connection, living in a small apartment will likely rule out noisy solutions. If you want to do, if you what you want to do is local testing, then a virtual machine on your already existing desktop, laptop, PC might be a better fit. And reliability and the price of electricity, right? In some countries, running a home server in your home might result in a huge power bill or might not be possible at all due to the power grid being unreliable. So, step number one, find a place for running your software. Step number two, find the software solution that fits your use case the best. So, if you're trying to really do a self hosting on your home server, find the best software. So, just like with hardware, there is also a lot of choice when it comes to software this year. Let me explain. Some solutions are pretty low level and require setting up the operating system and the services manually. I mean, do you want to do things manually? Are you comfortable? Do you have the acumen? Do you have the skill set to do manually? Go ahead and do it. If that's really, knock yourself out, really. Now, this is not very user friendly, but it really offers the most potential for learning about your system and how to manage it. And this approach will likely require you to learn more new things and pay more attention to automating common tasks. So things like updates, monitoring, backups, and also making sure that everything is secure. So no weak passwords, services properly isolated, regular and frequent updates. So if something goes wrong, then you will need to fix it yourself. But at least you have all the tools and knowledge to do so. So that's kind of cool. Now, there are solutions that cater to people who just want to get work done. And these solutions usually provide the user with a web based user interface that can manage the system and any services that can run on it. So that's kind of cool. Now, do you want to set it up on do you want to set up your very own WordPress blog? Just click this button and you will soon be set up with one without having to even know what the hell a Docker really is. Okay. Now the downside of this approach is that when things go wrong, and things might go wrong at some point, you will still need to familiarize yourself with the inner workings of the system. So troubleshooting issues with no preparation and learning new things under stressful circumstances is not very fun. So just be aware of that possibility. So cloud service providers have also started offering one-click solutions to setting up the most popular services. So your very own Minecraft server is just a click away. So that's kind of cool. Next, then this is step number 3. You want to think about managing your setup. Okay, just having the setup is not going to really cut it. You have to manage it. So, and when I talk about managing your setup, I want you to think about backups, security, monitoring. Okay, and I want to first talk about backups. So, once you have everything up and running, there are some topics that you really should pay attention to in order to avoid big problems down the line, especially if you are doing self-hosting on your home server. You're doing self-hosting of important topics, of important projects, of important operations. You want to be familiar, for instance, with backups. So if the only copy of your files lives on your NAS and something should happen to them, let's say accidental delete, hard drives suddenly die, you get hit by ransomware, etc., then you are in a world of hurt, big time, big time. So having backups is actually a mandatory part of your self-hosting adventure. So a mix of automated and manual backups is better than having no backups at all. Believe me, you will thank me later on, okay? So some ideas for backups. You have external hard drive, offline backups, snapshots, a hard drive of your friend's house. You'll also have encrypted backups to cloud storage providers. So when I speak about external hard drive attached to your server, basically you have a server you have a drive that receives automated backups that run on a schedule. Just make sure that any failures during the backup will be communicated to you over email, for example. It's also a great idea to occasionally check if the last backup was successful or not. The downside of this approach is that since this drive is still connected to the server, it is subject to other events that can shred your data. So I'm speaking about ransomware, power surges, etc. You also have offline backups that you will manually run on a regular schedule. For example, copying all files from the server to an external hard drive on the first day of each month. So what happens here is that if you accidentally delete all files on your server, or a piece of malware does this for you, or if your server is toast due to a power surge, you will still have a copy of the data that cannot be affected by those kinds of issues. Okay, so that's kind of cool because you are protected, really. And you also can have snapshots. So while technically not a backup, snapshots do help against accidental deletes. So depending on your setup, you might be able to retrieve files deleted, let's say a week ago, if you keep snapshots of your data for the last 30 days. So that gives you more flexibility, more time to really find solutions to whatever potential problems you might have. You can also think about a hard drive at your friend's house. This helps protect against the worst case scenario where your house burns down. And when it comes to encrypted backups to cloud storage providers such as Google Drive, OneDrive, or Backblaze, this will require a monthly subscription, but at least you will likely have a copy of the file somewhere, right? Just keep in mind that if you should get locked out of the service or fail to pay for it, then you might not be able to access the data hosted at that service. Now I want you to think about the security. So if you think about managing your setup, besides backups, you got to really be clear about security. And security is quite essential, I mean, this year, security is really quite essential. So if you are exposing a service to the wild, wild west that is the internet, then you will be a target. I mean, you'll be a target whether you know it or not. Okay. I mean, the internet is a very, very competitive space and also dangerous space. I don't need to tell you that. So automated scanners will poke your service, and if they find a vulnerability, they will use it. Okay. So to prevent the worst, you want to consider a few things when it comes to security. So you want to keep everything up to date. You want to only expose services that you absolutely need to expose. Make sure that your configuration is correct and try to set up your services so that you are prepared for an intrusion. Let me break it down for you. So when I say keep everything up to date, don't forget that some updates to there are some updates to apply. Okay, for them to apply, example kernel updates, you need to restart the machine. For other services, example SSH, they can be restarted without restarting the whole machine. So regular updates will help prevent most security issues. Only expose services that you absolutely need to expose. So with something like a web server, you really don't have a lot of choice here. But with services aimed towards a known set of users, you can limit the exposed surface area by using a VPN, okay, a virtual private network, or enforcing other restrictions. Here you have whitelisted IP addresses, failed to ban to block most intrusion attempts, etc. Make sure that your configuration is correct. I mean, a lot of intrusions are caused by configuration issues that usually end up with a service being exposed to the web without any passwords or other protections set up. It's also a good idea to check if you are accidentally exposing too much by checking what others are seeing when they try to connect to your service. And also, you want to really try to set up your services so that you prepare for an intrusion. So if the attacker is able to take control of service X, but it is completely isolated from other services and devices on the network, then the damage they can do is likely limited. This is just pure math. So let me talk to you about monitoring. So besides backing things up, securing things, you also want to think about monitoring. Okay. Now your setup will likely have issues. That's for sure. I mean, you're not perfect, and no, nothing is perfect when it comes to tech. So your setup will likely have issues. So hard drive might die, or the CPU might be overheating due to years of dust accumulation, or one service might be using up all the available resources, causing others to slow down as well. So a better understanding of what your system is doing will help a lot. Will help out a lot here. So cloud hosting service providers usually provide at least a basic level overview of your resource usage. So here I'm speaking about CPU, RAM, disk, network, etc. So if you are running your own machine, then you will need to figure this out on your own. So now to understand what your system is doing, a tool like NetData is a good starting point. And if your server slows down, then you can most likely pinpoint the reason by looking at the resource indicators. So it is not realistic for you to keep an eye on all the indicators all the time. So having some kind of alerting setup is also a great idea. So events such as a hard drive starting to throw errors, the CPU usage being at 100% for more than an hour, or a service not being reachable are all something that you might be interested in learning about. Now, the thing is, you don't have to monitor everything and have alerts set up to catch everything too, okay? But it's always a great idea. It's always a great starting point for responding to issues proactively. So ending up with all your data lost because you did not hear about hard drive failures is not a great situation to be really in. Believe me, been there, done that, okay? So that's important. So one thing I want you to really remember here is that it's all about preparation. Okay, if you want to do self-hosting on your home server, you will encounter issues that will be specific to the approach that you have chosen at the hardware and software steps, but that's perfectly normal. That's perfectly normal. Most of these issues have solutions, that are one search away. And if you have trouble figuring something out, then feel free to ask for help. You can ask me in the comment section, or you can just ask your provider. In conclusion to this conversation, I spoke to you about self hosting on your home server. I gave you the overview, the steps, and finally the conclusion. Thank you so much. God bless you. I will see you next time. Until then, remember, stay marvelous.